So beautiful to be together with you all. We start, as always, with a question that's come in advance from our beautiful family joining us online. And then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. So if you have a question, there's a microphone here. We'll start with one in advance, but don't be shy. Just come up and share your name and your question. But starting with one of the ones that's come in advance. I'm wondering what you think about using plant medicines like psilocybin mushrooms, ayahuasca, etc. as a way to connect to God. Would you say this is a wise way to become more spiritual? And this is asked by Jeff in Lemon Grove, California. So there's been a really big resurgence, you can say, in the West. Haven't seen it in India, but in the West, of people turning to psychedelics. Those that are natural, plant medicine, those that are synthetic, LSD and MDMA, etc., for spiritual growth. I'm not vehemently against it in the way that I'm against drinking alcohol or smoking cigarettes or things that don't have any purpose whatsoever, that in any way, shape, or form could possibly be beneficial and are simply harmful, and, as in the case of alcohol, that simply remove you from the present moment, that are nothing but an escape or a numbing from the present moment. The issue with the psychedelics, again, both those which are natural, plant-based, those which are synthetic, either way, is they absolutely can be helpful to people. But the dilemma is, at the end of the day, you have to make a choice, which is either I'm going to take these things every day or every other day or once a week for the rest of my life to maintain the state that I'm experiencing in them, or I'm going to learn to meditate so that through my meditation I can experience those states without the help of the chemicals. And my dilemma is, unless you're prepared and enthusiastic about the idea of spending the rest of your life on these medicines, then why begin with that in the first place? Because what most people say is, well, I'm just going to take it to give me the experience. And then I'll do it through my meditation. And my question always is, well, if at the end of the day you're going to have to come back to your meditation, if at the end of the day you're going to have to develop a spiritual practice that's powerful enough to give you that same experience, why not do that from the beginning? So I don't have, as I said, a deep sense of being against also have very, very powerful spiritual practices that are sustaining them in those states. And this is what those people use them for. And this would be the only place that I would say, if this is what you want to do, I don't have a moral or an ethical or a value or a spiritual problem with it. I still would prefer that you chose just through meditation and yoga and pranayama and seva and all of these ways that get us into that state otherwise. But here's the only way that I could see them being even properly used. You are stuck in a situation. You've got a strong spiritual practice, a daily practice, a disciplined practice. You're having deep spiritual experiences, but you have an emotional, psychological piece, perhaps from childhood, perhaps from some other time, that is keeping you really stuck and not enabling you to really enter the spiritual states that your meditation is otherwise offering. I know a lot of people who have had really great success in 1 or 2 or 3 experiences with the plant medicine in overcoming kind of lifelong spiritual, psychological, emotional stuckness. But they're not things to be used on a regular basis. They're not things to be used to keep you in an experience, but rather to show you what's possible, to help break through the stuckness that a lot of people's childhood and otherwise emotional psyche may end up stuck in. And only under the guidance of someone who really knows what they're doing. They're not party drugs. It's not about getting together with a bunch of friends and taking them to just have fun. It's stuff that is done under the guidance and the leadership, whether it's of a trained therapist, a trained psychologist, a shaman, a medicine man, whoever it may be, but someone who understands the depth and the severity of the power of these medicines. So if you go in with an intention to simply break through something, again, it's not my first choice. I would always suggest and encourage and desire and hope for the spiritual practices. It's what our saints and our sages and our yogis have been doing for thousands of years. The practice of yoga, yoga philosophy, yoga psychology works with these same mental and emotional states. So that would always be my first choice. But if you were going to work with these medicines, again, I don't have a problem with that at all, as long as you do it really clearly with a reverence for your process, for the medicines. As I said, under the guidance of someone who knows exactly what they're doing and guides you through the process, and with a really clear intention of breaking through a specific hurdle, blockage, stuckness that you've been experiencing for a really long time, that you've tried everything else, nothing is working. And again, I do know a lot of people for whom these medicines have been really helpful in those ways. So I know they can be very helpful. But just remember, ultimately, you're going to have to go back to using meditation to stay there. So If you can get there through meditation, patiently, it's better. If not, these are also absolutely there, and it's certainly much better than a life of depression, a life of misery. It's much better than committing suicide. It's much better than a lot of the other options that so many people who struggle go through. You know, there's universities and hospitals like Johns Hopkins, for example, that have done studies around the use of psilocybin in working with people who have suffered trauma, have suffered in different mental health ways. So there's definitely research and evidence around the efficacy of it, if used in that way. But remember, it's not about a party. It's not about taking something that you're going to just keep taking because it feels so much better to be high than to come down. But it's got to be intentional and part of your spiritual practice. Yeah, perfect. Come, please.
Pranam. So you talk about these...
Can you come a little closer and speak a little louder? Thank you.
Are you able to hear me now? So you talk about using these drugs only for...
Voy a keep volume parado, sonai ni dere. Thanks.
So, you know, you gave the advice for people who want to start this, right? Okay, there are specific reasons why you want to take a particular drug to overcome certain, you know, blockages or things like that. But what would you recommend for somebody who's already into something, let's say smoking, and it's an addictive pattern, and you feel guilty about it, but you are stuck there. So what do you use
question
for that?
Great question.
And I also have a follow-up on this. So you talk about meditative states and mental states, right? And it seems to me that the sort of goal you recommend is to reach that place or reach that state, but is it really going to lead to liberation? Because, for example, whatever I know a little bit...
I get it fully.
Adi Shankara says that knowledge is the only way to liberation. So
I get it. Wonderful. Yeah. Great two-part question. So as a follow-up to the question that we just took about psychedelics and plant medicine, he said, well, what if you're already taking a drug or smoking that you are addicted to? How do you get out of that state? And it's important to mention that one of the reasons, as I said before, that I'm not so vehemently against the use of plant medicine or psychedelics is they are not addictive. So you're not going to find yourself addicted to it in the way that you get addicted to alcohol or smoking or drugs like cocaine or heroin or marijuana or other drugs like that that actually have addictive qualities. With the psychedelics, you may get addicted to the ease with which you can experience those divine states, but the chemicals in the drugs themselves are not actually neurologically addictive. So there's no physiological addiction to the drugs. With drugs like smoking or alcohol or other addictive substances that don't actually have any kind of emotional or spiritual benefit, obviously the goal is to get unaddicted as quickly as you can and to stop using them as quickly as you can. It's not easy. their addictions. And yet, it's doable. When I was in graduate school, and in the years prior to coming to India, my early 20s, I used to smoke cigarettes. And was addicted for a few years. It was something I had picked up tragically, in a very tragic irony, I had picked it up in the recovery from an eating disorder, where everybody was smoking cigarettes, and it seemed like the lesser of two evils. And what I've seen is that a lot of people in alcohol rehab or other drug rehab will start smoking cigarettes. I went through this. And when I came to India the first time, obviously didn't smoke, spent 3.5 blissful months in divine ecstasy, had no interest in it. And when I moved back to India, I remember vividly, can still picture it, standing at the San Francisco airport. I was 25, standing just about to go in. My friend had dropped me off. I was officially moving back to India. And I remember standing there, smoking a cigarette, saying, okay, God, this is my last one. Like, here we go into a new life. And that was it. Never touched another one again. And I say this because, not to make it sound easy, but to make it really clear that addiction does not mean you are stuck forever. But you have to have enough of a motivation to give it up. For a lot of people, the motivation comes when a doctor says, my friend, you have lung cancer. We will treat it. You've got a good chance of living from it. Good thing we caught it early. But if you don't stop smoking, you will die. Or you've got emphysema, or you've got heart disease, whatever it may be. A lot of times that comes from a doctor, and people say, oh my God, and they quit immediately right there, lifelong smokers. Walk out of the doctor's office and never pick up another cigarette again as long as they live. The question for everyone who's addicted is, what's your incentive? Because you have to, a lot of people who are addicted, we want to stop, but we don't actually want to stop. We know that we should stop. So the mind says, oh, you really should stop. But you don't actually want to stop. You actually still enjoy it. And there's a part of your mind that says, nothing's going to happen to me. I'm not going to get sick. I'm not going to get lung cancer. And so you keep doing it. You're only going to stop something you're addicted to when you actually deeply want to stop. And whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, cigarettes, other drugs, whether it's gambling, whether it's food, whether it's pornography, whatever it is, you're only going to stop when you have an incentive. I knew there was absolutely no way I was going to live here and somehow hide a cigarette smoking habit. Like, there was no way. So my choice was, give up this stupid habit you've got, or give up your lifelong dharma. Wasn't even a choice. Wasn't even a question. The incentive was strong enough for me, but that was it. Never looked back. But you've got to ask yourself, do I want to stop? Or do I actually want to stop? And if you actually want to stop, there is so much available. It's not easy, but it is very doable. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of people stop drinking. The doctor says, you've got liver disease. Okay, last drop of alcohol. I've seen it happen in many people. The incentive has to be strong enough. And so the question becomes, are you motivated to save your life before you're already at death's door? Do you need to wait for a doctor's diagnosis of lung cancer or liver disease before you give it up? And only you can decide that. Nobody can do that for you. But the minute that you decide you really want to stop, it's not like you have to do it cold turkey like I did. There's a lot of programs. There's a lot of programs that take people through addiction recovery. But you have to want to stop. The second question he asked is, again, in reference to the first question around the plant medicine. He said, but can you actually attain liberation through these substances? No, absolutely you cannot. That's why I said, what they are useful for is the very singular and unique situation of someone who already has a very deep spiritual practice, but due to emotional, psychological, something that they may be stuck with, something from childhood, something maybe from later life, and they've done therapy and they've tried to work through it and they've spent years working in therapy and it's not working. I have seen people find an incredible value in, as I said, just 1 or 2 or 3 sessions. I don't mean using it for years. I mean a very short, time-bound, under the guidance of someone who knows what they're doing, session to release that which is keeping them stuck. And again, I wouldn't say this if there weren't now a lot of scientific and medical research saying the same thing. So I've seen it in people I know. There's also now research, a lot of it, coming out of a lot of big universities around it. No, it doesn't give you liberation, by any means. What it can do is give you a glimpse of what is possible, and therefore serve as a catalyst to people's motivation to keep meditating. But we keep coming back to the point is, you got to do the practice. Only through your own practice are you going to attain liberation. But if your practice is stuck, is stagnant, you've been doing it for a long time, you're getting nowhere, and you've got an opportunity under the guidance of someone, again, who really knows what they're doing, and you want to try it, I would not have any problem with you doing that. But remember, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of years of yogis and rishis and students of the yogis and rishis, clearing their psychological baggage, attaining liberation, attaining samadhi through Ashtanga Yoga. Patanjali gave us 8 limbs. So you don't need them at all. But for people who want to use that, I don't, as I said, have a problem with that. And I've seen it be helpful for some people. Yeah, other questions? Yes, come.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्णा.
Hare Krishna.
हिंदी में मेरा क्वेश्चन है. अकाल मृत्यु क्यों होती है? परमात्मा जब हमें यहाँ पे भेजता है तो क्यों नहीं 100 साल जीने देता है? लाइक एक्सीडेंट हो जाना, अटैक आ जाना, मतलब संसार में वो भेजता है हमें तो 100 साल के लिए भेजना चाहिए ना.
So he's asked, one sec, let's just, our students have
Thank
to
you.
go. Wonderful to see you. Yes. So he's asked, why do we have such a short time here on earth? That if God sends us here, shouldn't he send us here for 100 years, at least? You can have 100 years. The age given to us as the age of the correct lifespan in the Vedas is given as 120. 120. Absolutely no reason you cannot live 100 years or more. But you have to live them properly. You're not going to live them on McDonald's. If you live the life as prescribed by the yogis, as prescribed in the Vedas, absolutely you can live that long. But remember that God has given us not just our time on earth, but also apni buddhi, apni shuddhi. Our mind, our intellect, the purity of our mind and intellect. To be able to make proper decisions about our life. So it's not a free 100 years, jo bhi karo karo. It's live a life of balance. Live a life of alignment. Easily you can live 100 years. Easily. 120. Again, that's what the Vedas say. But you got to live them accordingly. Live them eating right, sleeping right, exercising right. But even more important than all of that, which a lot of our research is showing these days, is the state of your mind. You know, I read, because I have a big interest in this, so whenever there's a new, like, oldest person in the world or oldest person in America, I always read the articles about them, because they always interview them, like, oh, what is your secret? And what's interesting is some are vegetarian, some are not. Now, I'm a hardcore vegetarian for moral reasons, ethical reasons, spiritual reasons, but even though I've been a hardcore vegetarian since my teenage years, I have to admit, reading these articles, the science is could go either way. Some of them who live a very, very long time are vegetarians. They come from vegetarian cultures. Some who live a really long time come from cultures that are not vegetarian. But even the ones that are not vegetarian, they eat very, very, very little meat. They don't eat meat the way that people in non-veg societies today are eating meat. Tiny, tiny little bits. What all of their diets are consisting of, whole grains, not Wonder Bread, whole grains, good whole wheat, good millets, good rice, good, these sorts of whole grains, vegetables, many more vegetables than fruit. I always thought lots and lots and lots of fruit. Little bit, but not so much. Much more, it's whole grains and it's vegetables. And it's good fats. So whether it's good fats coming from olive oil or ghee or the little bit of meat that some people are eating, that's the diet. They all exercise. Lots, not just 45 minutes at the gym, but they're constantly kind of moving, walking. It's part of their lives. It's not a daily treadmill. It's part of their life. But interestingly, one of the most important things has to do with their mental health. Because some of them, you read these articles and, you know, they're eating ice cream into their old age or eating sweets into their old age. So again, it's not that, oh, they don't touch sugar or oh, they don't touch fat. I read them and pay attention to this. A lot of them, oh yeah, you know, eating ice cream into their hundreds, eating cake into their hundreds, but not huge portions of it. Not downing it because they're bored and depressed, so they've eaten a whole chocolate cake. But they're sitting around with the family at somebody's birthday. Yeah, they enjoy it. It's all about the mental state, interestingly. Some drink alcohol, some don't. So there's interestingly, you can kind of look at diets, you can look at all of these things. And the one thing that seems constant across them all is mental state. They all stay busy. They're very busy, they're very engaged, giving back. You know, they all say, oh yeah, you know, working till the day he died. Retired at whatever age and then started a brand new career, or never retired, depending on whatever they did. But every one of them, deeply engaged. It's never like, oh yeah, I retired 40 years ago and now I sit at home and just, you know, crochet or read or watch TV or whatever. It's always deep, deep engagement in the community. Doing work, staying busy, super busy. So that's what the science tells us about longevity. Our Vedas, Ayurveda gives specific prescriptions. It's eat a good vegetarian diet, meditate, do yoga, eat and live in alignment with seasons, with your body type, with where you live. But again, the meditation, the yoga, the sattvic food, it's not just changing your blood, it's changing your mind. And that has proven over and over and over and over again to be the key point. Be happy, be carefree, let things go, and be deeply engaged and always busy. And then, yeah, no reason you can't live to be 120. Beautiful. Yeah, last question.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
I would like you to give us, with the Kumbh coming up in a few months' time, I think it would be very helpful for us to know the importance of the Kumbh Mela and
great question.
And how it can impact and change our lives.
It's a wonderful question. Are you here tomorrow by any chance? Ab kal bhi hai? Kal? Oh, okay. Otherwise, I was going to say we'll start with it tomorrow, but no problem. We'll take it tonight. The Kumbh Mela. So, as Pujya Swamiji announced in the Ganga Arati, the Mahakumbh Mela is coming up in January and February. It's a very, very, very sacred time. It happens once every 12 years. I won't go into all of the details because that's a whole lecture in and of itself. Why Kumbh, how it formed, what the story is behind it. We'll take that up some other day. But the bottom line, it's the festival of the nectar of immortality. And so it is believed that if you have a bath in the sacred Sangam, the confluence of Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, at the prescribed time, that you will attain immortality. Meaning, not immortality of the body. It's not you emerge and the body never dies. But meaning that you attain liberation. Meaning that you attain that state of knowing the truth of who you are. Because the truth of who you are is immortal. So it's a time in which the air, the energy, is very, very, very sacred. It's charged. Literally, you feel it. It's a very auspicious time in that place for spiritual practices. They've got all these calculations. I don't remember them now, but it's things like meditating for 5 minutes in the Kumbh Mela at this time is the equivalent of, lifetimes of spiritual practice. It's things like that. The air, the atmosphere, the planetary alignment, and the pull is so strong that it's very, very auspicious to be there. We will be there for the entire time with a beautiful Kumbh Mela camp filled with many, many, many divine activities and programs. So yeah, it's a really sacred time to come. It's huge. There's going to be, as Pujya Swamiji said, about 400 million people. I mean, just think about that. 400 million people. No sporting event, no rock concert, no lottery. They've come just for spiritual connection and liberation. So you're surrounded not just in this divine time, but you're surrounded by people and energy of people who are only there for spiritual growth and awakening. So it's really, really, really powerful and beautiful. I recommend to people that they come and have the experience. And yeah, come and stay with us. Beautiful. And some other time when we have more time, I'll share the full story of the Kumbh Mela. Wonderful. Kal aapki question se shuru karenge. We'll start with yours tomorrow. I hope that you all have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. A beautiful morning to our family joining us from all over the world. And so much love to you all.